Good evening. I would like to open the Instruction Committee meeting tonight, Monday, November 17th, 2025. The time is 5:31, and we have an agenda before us. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the agenda before us.
We have a motion. I second, and it's been properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. I'll turn things now over to Dr. Hummer.
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. We do have a series of items that we're very excited to present to you. Mrs. Knight, if you don't mind forwarding the slides for me to get to the agenda slide. So we do have an update to where we are with our Q1 data. As I presented to you all last month, we had some of that information, but as we finished up with a lot of our assessments, we do have an update to where we currently are to include our attendance, behavior, and performance data. So we'll be sharing that with you. Then we have our regularly scheduled annual presentation for you all with where we are with our SOQ and our class sizes. We are required by code to present that to you and go over any questions that you might have. And then we have, two action items for you this evening, where we have our 2-year calendar that will be coming before you. We have done a lot of work with this with Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Knight. We've sought a lot of feedback from administrators, teachers as a whole. We also shared it with you. So we're looking forward to moving that forward to the full board for approval, which we have up for recommendation. And then we also have the 2 books that we're going forward through review. We had, under Mrs. Knight's fantastic leadership, had led each of those committees, and we have a recommendation for you to take to the full board for approval as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will now hand it over to Mrs. Knight and her amazing team. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Hummer, and I couldn't agree more. They are amazing. So at this time, I'm going to welcome our senior directors of elementary and secondary leadership up to talk through our Q1 data review. So thank you, Ms. Muldowney.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go first. Dr. Myers is fighting a little cold back there, so we're going to try to keep at least one of us fairly healthy for the time being. So as Dr. Hummer shared, we do have our Q1 data to take a look at. At this time, we have broken it down to attendance, behavior, and performance. These things come in different times over the course of the quarter, but we like to collectively kind of put it all together so that you can see it in a snapshot. A couple key points that we've pulled out from our data. For attendance, you're going to see in a moment that actually our chronic absenteeism has greatly improved this quarter from this time last year. However, we do have 49% of all of our chronically absent students are economically disadvantaged. This is down 2% from where it was last year, but it's still a significant number on where we want to capture and gain more students being present more often in schools. So it's still an area of focus, even though it is an increase. From the behavior perspective, we do have a 15% reduction of the behavioral infractions that are of a safety concern. That was one of the most significant areas last year that we were focusing on. There were 224 at this time last year, 191 currently. So from Q1. So still work to do, absolutely, but moving in the right direction, yes. One highlight of performance is that 42% of our Hispanic students are at a high risk of developing reading difficulties according to VALS, but that is down from 56% this time last year. So again, those numbers are not exactly where we want them. We're going to continue to strive to get better, but they are certainly making gains and improvement from where we were at this time last year.
For sure.
Yeah. So a few more highlights for you. 55% of our EL students are high risk for the reading difficulties according to VALS, but last year that was 74% of our EL students. So that is some incredible gains I attribute to Emily Headley and leading the EL for our division, putting more supports in place, teachers working within those classrooms, EL teachers supporting classrooms in the general ed setting. All of those things are making a difference for our EL students, and it's definitely apparent in our data. We have 21% of students with disabilities who are in the low-risk category for reading difficulties. This is an increase from 13% last year. That is what we want to see. By no means are we satisfied with 21% of our students with disabilities being at the low risk. That number should be much higher, but it is wonderful to see an increase from last year at this time. And then, as I stated before, the chronically absenteeism overall for elementary is incredibly better than where we were. We are at 12% for Q1 this year, and last year at this time we were at 20%. So we are capturing more students. We do have a better attendance rate, but we do know that of all of those students who are chronically absent, that 49% of them are economically disadvantaged. So we know where we need to target our supports.
So before you move on.
Yeah.
Are there any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. When we take a look at attendance by school, you can see where those percentages are. We have some schools as low as 8 and 9%, others with some larger populations at 14. What we need to do is take a look specifically now. All schools have a list of chronically absent students. Crystal Nicola in her office was able to share that individually by school. So now the school SISP teams are working, those student support specialists working with the families to determine why these students who are chronically absent, why they are absent, and what we can do to help support them to be here more frequently. In some cases, they are things like trips. They are things going back to visit family in other countries where they're gone for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And you know, if you're going to make that investment, sometimes that happens. But there are certainly a number of families out there that we can help best support as well to have them to school more often if there's some hardship that's causing them not to be in school. We do want to work very closely with the families because we know at elementary that most of the time it is not the student who is not wanting to come necessarily to school. And so we really want to work with the parents and the families to help get them there. They're not the ones that are driving and just not coming in the door. So we want to help support everybody with that. When we take a look at behavior, here we are seeing some increase in data in some places, decrease in the others. We are still working to norm those discipline practices and how we are entering things into Infinite Campus, you know, which things are just a warning, where we give, you know, some grace for our youngest learners who are just learning school, and really trying to norm those processes. So in our monthly meetings, my monthly meetings with elementary administrators, we are continuing to work through which types of infractions from the Code of Conduct we are entering, which things are warnings, which things require more further disciplinary actions, and how we're being consistent in entering that so that we are looking at the actual data for what our schools are experiencing on a regular basis. All right, the first set of performance data that we'll take a look at is our VALS data. This is reading. I do think it's important to note that VALS is a screener. It is not a diagnostic. So a screener is going to give us information on where we can best provide instruction for students, right? It's going to tell us those skill sets that they have and skill sets that they are lacking. It is not a predictor per se of like pass rates for the SOL. That's more of a diagnostic assessment, but the VALS is a screener. So it definitely helps support in us knowing where instruction needs to take place. Looking at our band data, you can see for our cohorts as well as for our grades, there's not a whole lot of movement from one year to the next. Some cohorts have more movement than others. Third grade definitely looks like an anomaly because it is. Last year, what you're looking at there for the 24-25 data is students in third grade who were new to Virginia, who did not take the assessment, and or teachers who needed more information on particular students who came in already designated as being high needs. They could also give that assessment. So that subset of kids is a small number, plus it's not the same group. What you see for 25-26, we've decided to test all third grade students, and so there's where all of our students stand now. So we'll be able to tell at the mid-year and the end of the year where that growth was for those third grade students. So here you see some of our cohort data, and I say cohort lightly because the first one there was kindergarten. It's obviously not a cohort data. They are a brand new group of students. However, we do have more students this year coming in at a moderate risk as compared to 24-25. So at 24-25, high risk in kindergarten, 32% of them were at high risk. This year, we have 26% of them at high risk. So we're starting off in a better place and capturing less students. When we take a look at our first graders, that cohort from kindergarten to first grade, we have an 8% growth in low-risk students, and all the other bands are lower. So if you look at that -7%, what that says is last year, those kids in kindergarten, 32% of them were at high risk. This year, only 25% of that same group of students is at high risk. So the instruction that a percentage of those students had, they held on to and have moved out of that high-risk band. Second grade is where we see some concerns that we want to focus on. Our low-risk students remained the same at 4%. Those who were,
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
so sorry.
1 second, we have
Yeah.
a question,
yeah,
please.
of course, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
I felt bad just interrupting you, but
No,
I
no,
want to
no.
make sure I understand. So this third
Yeah.
column, the cohort growth, so these data are all speculative, right? Like they don't necessarily coincide with actual achievement data at the end of the year. These are just predictive, right? They're all speculative.
No, these are the assessments that these students took.
So when we're talking about predictive scores and we're talking about risk, how do these actually shake out when the kids get out of that band of K through 3? Are they lining up with actual performance after third grade, or is there a substantial gap?
So, well, and then this is now moving Val's for elementary K through 5. So 4th and 5th graders are now, some of them are being assessed, but only if they did not pass the SOLs, so that we could figure out what those areas are that they were lacking moving in.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does, yeah.
Okay. Second grade. Sorry. I think that you're fine. I want you to interrupt. I want to answer your questions. I just trying to remember where I was at. So with second grade, our low risk students remained the same. So our students who were successful continue to be successful. However, we have some students that were in the moderate risk that are now into the high risk, meaning that they lost some ground over the course from the end of last year to this year. So you'll see that there's a 4% gain of high risk students in that cohort. So those are, again, the same students that were in first grade that are now in second grade that we need to go back and do some reteaching and instruction, because there are certainly more gaps there than there were previously. And then our quarter one data for iReady, again, we're going to look at this in two ways. One by the entire cohort, 24-25 and 25-26, and then once by grade level. What's important to know with this iReady math data when you're looking at this is a standard view, right? So these students took this assessment in September, and they took this assessment on all content for their grade level that year. So where you see those large percentages in the middle at one grade level below, we would anticipate that because they have not had the instruction yet on that grade level of which they are sitting. Our students who are sitting up there at 4% and 10% mid or above, those are students who we need to make sure we are enriching because they have already captured and know and understand a lot of the content for the grade level that they are currently in.
How far below grade level do some of these students go? I'm curious. You say 2 or more. What's the more?
It can depend. You can have a fourth grader who is working at a first grade level. You could have a third grader at a kindergarten. You could also have a first grader that is at the end of the. It's going to be the higher grades coming down to low because
Sure.
when they're in first, there is no 2 year below, right? There's only have a 1 year below.
Well, of course.
So from second grade on, it really does fluctuate and vary.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can see that by the grade level as well. So what this data tends to tell us is that we are growing kids as they get up older in the grades, but we're also getting bigger gaps with some students as well. So that middle of the road group is kind of splitting. And so we are having some increases by fifth grade there of students who are 2 or more grades below, but we also have increases of students who are at where they need to be or above where they need to be. So
Sure.
it's very interesting to see that data. What is great about iReady is it does drill down into individual student data.
Yes.
So schools are now able to take that, look very specifically at what skill sets a particular student has succeeded at, which ones they need support with, and there are lessons directly in there to address those supports. So we can identify what those gaps are by student.
iReady is extremely helpful.
Yes, very much so. And then the next one, just for reference, is some good news. This is their beginning of the year view, unlike the standard view. So this is the view where it shows you the percentage of students who are ready to take on that new grade level. So 71% of our kids are coming in ready and prepared for the new grade level of content that they are about to receive. And then we have 20% needing some intervention from tier 2 and 9% in tier 3. That's where the focus needs to be right now. So that's where we should be looking at what those gaps are for those students, what skills that they need to have filled in, what intervention they need in order to move on to be prepared. Otherwise, they'll continue to get further behind. So those are the groups from individual schools and grade levels and classrooms that we should be looking at.
I'd be curious to see what the percentage of EL students are in Tier 2 and Tier 3, and how that's affecting the numbers.
I can get that. I
Thank
can
you.
get that for you. Absolutely. Not a problem. So here you just have a summary of our next steps, which we've really kind of talked through already. The chronic absenteeism, we want to make sure that our SIS teams in schools are meeting with families to increase that attendance. We want to ensure that now that we have this VALS data and we know where students need additional support, that those student reading plans are being written, student-specific goals, and helping them make those gains, and that we are using the HQIM for Tier 1 instruction. We're continuing to work with schools to align those discipline practices and make sure that we have consistent entry into Infinite Campus so that we are capturing what is occurring in our buildings. And like I just shared with the iReady, ensuring that we are really setting specific individual student goals using that data that we have, since we can clearly see where those gaps lie.
Are there any questions? Questions? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Ms.
much.
Muldowney. All right, Dr. Myers.
Good evening. So at the secondary level, thank you. I've separated this out between middle and high schools, and so some key points here for middle school, beginning with attendance. Good news here with attendance. There's a 7% reduction overall between last year and this year at this time. We basically, and you'll see a slide later on that shares that we're in the 19 to 20% across all middle schools. Last year, we're now in the 12 to 14%, and that's the same with high school as well. So very good change there, progress we're seeing. 8% with behavior, reduction in behaviors between last year, Q1, and this year. One of the things that we did this summer was we worked very hard, the principals and a group of us, to norm our practices in regard to discipline and basically calibrate our practices. What causes this and what's the impact? And so we had a lot of discrepancies, not of any fault of anyone, but you get used to your practices, and we needed to revisit that collectively. And so that's what we did, and we're seeing that it's making a difference. We're really working on the restorative practices option there, and it makes a difference in a positive way. So performance, our reading across all grade levels at the middle school level is up 6%. Jameswood Middle actually had an increase of 11%, but overall they are up across the board. So very, very happy about that. And then the math reduction, I'll go into more details shortly about that in one of the slides, but you see there a reduction of approximately, and that is approximate, of 28% between students in the 6th grade and then into the 7th grade achieving mastery. And we start to tease students out at that point in regard to acceleration, and that does contribute to that reason.
Dr. Meyer?
Sure.
For behavior, I'm curious, the meeting that you had this summer with the building administrators, when you streamlined things, did you also include the consequences of what the behavior?
Very much so.
Okay.
We did a complete inventory of the past several years of what the infractions were, what was the discipline, alignment, and then what we did was we did a cross-reference across all the schools to look for consistencies and inconsistencies.
Okay.
And then that's how we normed our process.
I know I've had several staff members in the past talk with me about inconsistent consequencing.
Right.
So.
From school to school.
Correct.
And not that we're perfect at it, but
No.
we are much better as far as our practices beginning, this year.
For
We're
sure.
seeing there was great benefit to what we did.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Mr. Bell, you got it.
Yes.
A quick question for Dr. Myers.
Sure.
With the positive direction that we're making in attendance and behavior specifically, what can we attribute that gain in?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. So in regard to attendance, we have some really fantastic specialists working on attendance with our schools. They are in the schools pretty much every day, working with students, working with families. That makes a big difference. It also is follow-through and parent calls and really engaging the families, making sure that they know, look, we missed your child today, and let's work together to try to figure out a way. So there's a lot more in what we would say tracking, but honestly, it's the interpersonal skills. It's that taking that extra step with our kids to show them that it matters. And, you know, coming out of COVID, and I know we continue to talk about that, but it is real, that we saw, as far as attendance, of course, we saw a shift in mentality towards attendance to school. And now we're seeing it slowly start to swing back in the direction we were pre-COVID.
Well, I appreciate the personal touch that our staff's giving to
Yeah.
the families, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So some key points are highlights here. I've just highlighted a few of our schools here, and then also overall, incredibly proud of Frederick County Middle School. You're going to see that in multiple settings here where they had the highest proportion of students in mastery at the grade 6, 78%. And when we saw those numbers come out, we were like, wow. And so a lot of kudos there for their staff. And also the rest of our schools are making progress as well. So James Wood Middle School, I referenced that a few minutes ago, 11% increase in their reading last year. Frederick County Middle, again, reduction of chronic absenteeism of 12%, and fantastic. And then behavioral infractions amongst sixth graders reduced by 15%. So we want to thank the elementary schools for that. They obviously prepared our now sixth graders very well to be good students at the sixth grade middle school level. Key points at high school. Again, we're seeing some positives here, 6% reduction of students who are chronically absent. That was very similar to the middle schools, where it was in the low 20% last year, and it was hovering between 18 and 22%. This year, it's down into the 13, 14%. So everybody's making great strides in that area. And I would say that the reasons are very much the same. It's making a concerted effort to address attendance and why are our kids not in school. Behavior, there is an increase. You're going to see the bar graph shortly about there is an increase of 9%. Some of that, tardies to school at the high school level are an age-old problem. They really are. And especially when you have students who begin driving. And so we contend with that a lot. We are also experiencing where there's a real crackdown, and there has been previously, but the principals are doing a great job enforcing that cell phone policy. And so that spike, we dug down into the data, and those were the two things. It was tardies to school, not necessarily class, but then also cell phone infractions. The performance reading at or above grade level. So that number's not good, 31%. What we found out, though, was that many of our high school students were not taking this IXL assessment, especially our students like governor school students, some of our kids in the honors classes. We were not reaching all kids in taking that assessment. We also, in some settings, were not setting the conditions that we know we need to set when you're in a testing environment. It needs to be communicated to our students and to our families that this matters. We're talking about your capacity to read. And so this second diagnostic window, or this second window, we have worked very hard to make sure every child is taking this assessment, and with the clear message that it matters. We want to demonstrate and be proud of the fact that certainly more than 31% of our students are reading at or above grade level. Ninth grade, the geometry, geometry at the high school level, 91% is fantastic. Of course, they're on a higher trajectory sometimes if they're coming out of Algebra 1 as an 8th grader and they're taking geometry as a 9th grader. Those are your higher end math students. But that doesn't reflect just the students who did that. There are 10th graders in this group as well. So that's really great that they have made that kind of progress.
Are there 8th graders in this as well?
No, those were teased out by high school and middle school
They were.
separated.
Okay.
Right, you'll see that chart. No, we intentionally did that.
Gotcha. And Dr.
I do
Erskine?
have just one follow-up, Dr. Myers, and
Sure.
I'm sorry if you said this already and I missed it. So that reading stat, how does that compare? So, like, if this was an anomaly because of the test pool or test conditions or all of the above, how far off would you speculate that we are year over year? Because, I mean, when I look at that, what I see is that fewer than a third of our students are reading at grade level, and that scares me a bit.
Yes, me too. And it does all of us. And so we started digging into the test results. We're fortunate that we can run all those numbers to say who tested, who didn't test, which teacher tested, which one didn't. So we were looking at all of that, and the theme came out. Some of our higher end students were simply not being tested. I can't really tell you what that percentage would be. I'm anxious to see what the difference is now that we're going to make sure all of our students are tested. So I really can't tell you what that would be, other than to go back. What I could do is go back and look at what the performance was last year at this time compared to this year. I don't think, though, that they were testing every student last year. So
that's
it
kinda
may
why
be
I
one.
asked year
It
over
may be
year.
just one and the same.
Okay.
The changes that are being made right now is what's going to make the difference in accurately reflecting our students' reading at grade level.
Okay.
Yes.
This
And
is
Dr.
not good
Myers,
data.
If I can
Yeah.
add a comment also to round out this question. So Dr. Erskine, based on the data that we've seen, this is not correlative with what we see in the SOL performance for students. It's
Correct.
actually higher, so that's why it stood out to us. So student performance on the SOLs is probably unscrubbed data 20% higher than this number on average. Now, high school is a little bit more unique because, of course, they have some additional assessment opportunities throughout the year with term grads, and then we have the opportunity to also gain some credits through work keys and so forth. But just in terms of unscrubbed data, minimum an additional 20%. So we know this number is significantly it does not accurately reflect our current students' ability to pass a reading test. So that's what stood out. So what we are all trusting is that when we look at Q2 data with the expectations that have been now communicated and the supports that have been put in place, that we should see significant improvement in Q2. So that's what
Yes.
we'll be looking for.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so then some highlights here. James Wood High School, highest percentage of students demonstrating mastery in geometry. James Wood High School, great work there. 66%. So we wanted to include this in there because oftentimes work keys gets overlooked, and work keys is also valuable because that's, obviously the work-based readiness for reading, for writing. Actually, the work-based writing percentage was 86%. So they, as I say, that 31% is not terribly reflective or not reflective because, as Mrs. Knight said, our SOLs are much higher than what that is showing. So we're proud of that. 7% reduction of chronic absenteeism at James Wood High School. They were the highest in regard to the overall reduction. And then 21% reduction of discipline. When we worked at the high school level this summer on that, Sharando, there were lots of light bulbs going off in a good way and saying, you know what, I didn't realize that you were doing it this way, or, as they have those conversations. And it made a really big difference because a student who arrives 5 minutes late for the school day shouldn't be sitting in in-school detention for an entire day, 5 minutes, 7 hours, or 6 hours. We should never have that kind of practice. And that's not anything against Sharando. It's simply it carryover from previous years. And so when they saw that, like, no, this is not what we're going to do. And so they made those adjustments, and that's great.
Okay.
Fantastic.
This will take us down a little bit deeper, and I'll just go over this because I've highlighted things as we've gone along. The chronically absent, as I shared with you earlier, last year those percentages were up in the 18 to 22%. So you see progress across the board. Behavior. Millbrook, and I know it looks like, oh my gosh, Millbrook, what's going on here? Well, Millbrook has really cracked down on the cell phone violations. And so we really looked at that. I worked with Mrs. Altendorf. When she saw that, she panicked a little bit. And I said, don't panic, let's dig and let's figure it out. And so all three of the high schools have issues with students being tardy to school. And so that's an area we need to continue to investigate. The cell phone infractions, Millbrook does a really great job, as they all do, in holding the students accountable. And so you see it there. Performance, the IXL reading data. I want to highlight something that is positive in this. I want you to look at grade 7 last year compared to this year. So we had, 68% between far below and below grade level. And this year we have 55% as of the first quarter. So there's been great strides there, which we are proud of. Anybody who, and I know all of you guys, we've all been in middle school and served as a teacher or an administrator at middle school. And when I saw that 7th grade had the best, I was especially proud of them, because 7th grade can be a challenging year, as we know, for middle school students. So very happy with that change.
Middle child of.
It is. And 7th grade, you're not, that we could have a big conversation about 7th grade. Yes. It's a unique time in life. So middle school math, when we're looking at that, this simply highlights BIRD to all 4 of the middle schools, and that shows you the breakdown by grade level. One of the things that happens, as we know, and the new House bill will just continue to ramp this up. So students may come into 6th grade from 5th grade, and they may be accelerated into Math 6, 7. And then the same thing happens, they may be accelerated into Math 7, 8, which those cut scores, you know, they was 466, and now it's going to be 440, and then it goes to 425. So, and then there's the open gateway that parents can say, I want my child in 6, 7, even though the scores don't reflect that it's maybe an appropriate placement. But they do have that right to do that. So what happens is the students who are accelerated, we want that. We want our children achieving and challenging themselves to the highest level. As a result, though, our students who are in the classic Math 7 are some of our most struggling learners. And so we've talked to, it is a laser focus right now with our walkthroughs, with our alignment of lesson planning. We're looking not only within a school, but across the schools, comparing also with other school divisions to see what is it that is happening here that we can resolve. Because as I say, we're laser focused on it. Even though those are sometimes our most struggling math students, it still matters. We're better than that, and we need those scores to improve. Algebra at the middle school level, those are our 7th or 8th graders, so you can see mastery over 70%. We would expect that, to be honest with you. And this is as of the first quarter. So they are well on their way. And that's a test of, the standards that they've learned so far. So it's not the full year. And then same thing with geometry. You would expect a middle school student in geometry to be at a higher level. IXL reading data for the high schools. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier, is that we did not have all students testing. And many of our advanced students are not represented in this group. There was also the issue of if they did not take it because they were absent or some reason, they were not having them make it up. And so all those things, unfortunately contribute to the negative scores you see. High school and geometry data, there you can see between the schools and how the ratios go, or the percentages rather go with that. It's just a snapshot to see. You'll see with Sharando with algebra, but then looking at Sharando this year with the geometry, is lower. So I've spoken with Dr. Crawford about that and looking at the standards to see what are the hot spots that we can catch right now before we get any further in the school year. And so our next steps, we need to standardize the interventions that we establish. We need to stay the course with it. We need to not back off. It needs to become our norm. And so standardizing those high expectations and everybody following the same practice on that is going to matter. One of the things we are going to investigate with behavior is looking at all factors, chronic absenteeism and behavior. If they are behavioral, we have behavioral issues, are those students also chronically absent, or is it the reverse? Why aren't they coming to school? And is it because when they come to school, they get in trouble? So we need to look at all those factors. So we are going to dig down into that. And I will tell you, Mr. Strong and his team have done a fantastic job addressing those areas. So we are partnering with them. Reading assessment, making sure that every student takes it. Ensure students are reading below grade level, are receiving Tier 3 intervention provided by a reading specialist. That comes from the Virginia Literacy Act. Our challenge is, based on our VALS data, we have as many as 330 students at one of our middle schools on a reading plan. And when you only have one reading specialist and a reading plan in addition to actually providing intervention for students, it's simply not possible for one person to handle that. And so we are, trying to rethink how we do it. Of course, we have all teachers involved in this, not just the reading specialist. But what the state calls for is that the reading specialist, if you read the Virginia Literacy Act, they are saying this will be provided by a reading specialist. And so that is a huge challenge for us, just the human resources to be able to do it. And so high quality instructional materials and then specific standards as I discussed in math. So that is my report. Do you have questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Feel better?
Well, thank you, Dr. Myers. All right, well, with that said, I am going to begin our conversation related to our annual report and SOQ ratios. So this should feel very familiar. We are required to report this to the board each year or annually. And the SOQ information that is offered by the state is a set of guidelines that really sets the parameters for licensed staff to student or per pupil ratios that either reflect either school-wide or division-wide averages. So these charts should look familiar with the average being 24-1, and you can see the maximum class limits there from kindergarten at 29, our primary grades of 1 through 3 at 30, our intermediate grades from 4 to 6 at 35, and then when we move into the English courses, the expectation from the state is that our average across the division is 24-1, and then at high school and middle school, it's a school-wide average is what we shift into. So for the sake of, I think these are pretty clear. What I've done to try to make certain that we highlight what's important to call out is I've just highlighted in yellow the areas where we want to keep our thumb on our schools, where outside of the yellow highlights, we are in excellent shape in terms of staffing. But where I've highlighted in yellow, that's where we're right there sitting on the cusp, and we just have to keep an eye or focus on some of those schools. You'll see this pattern continue through most of our intermediate grades at the elementary school, where we are sitting right there at the state ratio. But in order to continue to keep these numbers below that ratio, we just thank you for your continued support with staffing. So as you can see here on this slide, Armel Elementary School, just again at the intermediate grades, along with Bass Hoover, same thing. We haven't exceeded it. We are right there. So we'll just keep continuing to monitor that. Across Evendale, as well as Greenwood Mill, same thing. We're getting really close to that 24-1. And then here at Indian Hollow and again at Middletown, none of which are a surprise because we've talked about growth so often. And then here again at Redbud Run, same thing, intermediate grades over and over. And so here is the average in terms of how it fleshes out across our schools by those wide bands, kindergarten, grades 1 through 3, and grades 4 through 5. So again, no surprise here. And then at our elementary resource courses, we are in great shape. So you'll continue to see that as we move through. We are nowhere near our 24-to-1 averages here. So I will just move through these unless anyone has a question. Okay. And then now we are closing out our elementary schools. And here are the class size reduction for K through 3. Where we are staffing our classrooms at a 1:18 ratio, where we get extra funding in order to support that by making sure that we stay and maintain those ratios. We have to have at least 30% free rates for our lunch for our schools to qualify. And so, of course, we have a number of schools that meet that criteria. You're looking at that list right there. And again, we're in great shape so far. And then here, and that was it for elementary school. I have a summary slide at the end. Are there any questions about elementary? Okay.
Thank you.
For middle school, similar, our ratios are the same, 24-to-1 until we get to that middle school, that English for high school and middle school, where we're looking again for a 24-to-1, and then eventually high school 21-to-1. And you will see that we are not, we're in great shape. We're not touching those numbers or close to those averages. With Frederick County Middle and English, we're creeping up just a little bit, but we're in good shape. And you'll see that theme throughout. And so here was the last one in middle school, English Language Arts at Ayler, just an area to pay attention to. Okay. Questions about middle school?
So the world language seems to have the highest number of students. Is that that's not an elective, is it?
It is.
It is, okay.
It is. At the high school, I mean, it's an expectation if you're going to get a diploma,
Right.
you have to have the 3. At the middle school, it's an optional.
But in middle school, it's optional, so that's why
Got
you
it.
can have the higher number.
You can.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so off to high school. And remember here, we shift from class averages to school-wide averages. So the average here is expected to be 21-to-1. So that's why it's highlighted, because you can see we're a little close. Right here in each of the high schools, you'll see the same theme. But again, no surprise, we are growing in size, so we're cutting it close.
Well, the fourth high school will help put a dent
That's
in
right.
that.
It'll give us some relief there, so you can see just how close we are to the 21-to-1 school-wide average. Okay? Any questions about high schools? Okay. Well, here is our summary slide with regards to our SOQs. And as you can see from kindergarten, we have no FCPS classroom that exceeds 29 students. And the highest pupil-teacher ratio is 19-to-1 at Middletown. In grades 1 through 3, our primary grades, we have no class that is currently greater than 30. And the ones that are kind of closer in that PTR or pupil-teacher ratio, Orchard View, Bass Hoover, and Stonewall. And then in our intermediate grades from 4 to 5, no class size exceeds 35 students. And that Greenwood Mill and Redbud Run are our highest with PTRs of 26-to-1 as
A lot
individual
of fourth and
schools.
fifth graders, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then at the secondary level, our grades 6 through 12 English, our ratios have been managed effectively. So again, thank you for the staffing. We are in good shape there. And then our middle and high school ratios of 21-to-1 school-wide. We've just gone over those numbers, and the high schools are right there on the cusp. Okay. Before I turn it over to HR, any final questions about our standards of quality guidance or ratios?
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay. Kristen Campbell's going to share a little bit about
I
staffing.
think you just went through like 20 slides, and I'll see if I can keep the pace going. All right, so what you are looking at here is a comparison of the number of staff that we have, total FTEs in our budget, from last year in comparison to the current school year. And this is broken down by administrators, which are primarily our directors and principals, and then assistant directors and assistant principals, our supervisors and coordinators, Teachers, of course, being the largest population of our staff and they're student-facing. Other professionals, these are individuals such as school psychologists and IT folks in this building, specialists in this building, individuals that are in finance and HR. And then the rest of the staff are captured under the support staff category.
Which clearly is in keeping up with the growth of what we have in our schools.
We are grateful each year that we have additional positions added in terms of FTEs, and we're grateful for that support, always looking to add to that.
Okay.
And we also repurpose positions each year in order to use our FTEs wisely.
Okay.
Are you? Thank you. Okay, so now we have our teacher years of experience, and this is an interesting one and one that we've been looking at in Personnel Committee as well. Our largest group for this year of teacher experience is at the year 5 mark with 108. And the second largest group is that first year teacher.
Questions?
Any questions about that? And then we shift to the top reasons for leaving FCPS as shared with employees who are leaving us last school year. And so when we survey staff who are leaving, we ask them to identify their top 3 reasons for leaving. These were the top reasons that were identified. And of course, we ask for this information. Not everybody chooses to disclose it, but this is the information that we received.
It's a cross-section, so. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Campbell. It is now time for Mr. Thompson to review the calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. So first, I want to say thank you to the work in years past you've done on approving our calendar and the work you've done with our calendar, because clearly it made this year's calendar committee some of the easier calendar committees that I've served on for a variety of reasons. And like I said, the biggest being the work that has been done on the calendar. So first, I want to talk to you a little bit about the process and how we went, or the process we went through with the calendar committee. So first would be that we selected a committee across all stakeholders of our school community to ensure that we got a diverse representation in reviewing our proposed calendars. Next, what I would like to share with you is we made a Google-friendly site that allowed for review of calendars from surrounding committees. It provided our instructional time comparison in terms of how many essentially snow days we have built into the calendar, and proposed draft calendars for 26, 27, and 27, 28. We provided an open feedback link to gather shareholders' ideas and concerns, and then ultimately that led us to a calendar committee calendar committee meetings across calendar committee meetings, which were scheduled for 6 sessions that ultimately only needed to be 2 sessions because we came to consensus. After we had our 2 calendar committee meetings and then came to our consensus, it resulted in some conversation around using data to look at what are some areas that we could have some refinement around our calendar. And essentially what we came to was we know that chronic absenteeism is an issue of concern that we have in our schools. So really, the only feedback that we had for our calendar and creating a better calendar was let's take a finer look at the Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. So I reached out to Student Services, reviewed the data, and it suggested that our absenteeism was much higher on that Monday and Tuesday. So I am very thankful that we are in a division that takes data very seriously, and our proposed calendar, therefore, will be that we do not have student days on Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. Now, there is a cost to that, both financially, and there is also a cost to that due to instructional days. And so what we looked at to do to minimize that impact is essentially back up 1 day at the beginning of the school year and start 1 day earlier. That's at the end of the day, that's where we landed, and that's our recommendation. The two drafts that you have before you that has a question between, or what the difference is between the two of them, is a late winter long weekend and essentially having Good Friday off. I ended up making the recommendation and put forth to Dr. Hummer that ultimately landed on the final recommendation was we reviewed the input, and the input showed that the desire would be to go to draft 1, which is the long 4-day weekend in the spring, which is what we currently have. So to boil all this down, the essence of the schedule or the calendar would be stay with what we have, take 2 extra days off on the Thanksgiving week for students, Monday and Tuesday, back our start day up by 1 day, which essentially impacts us to have 1 less student day. So
What's the cost associated with this to the school division?
yeah, so there is a cost per day when we're not in session, and I will defer to Ms. Anderson for the answer to that question.
The cost doesn't come to the operating fund because the state will still fund us fully for 990 instructional hours or 180 days as long as we meet one of those. The cost comes in the school nutrition fund. So every day that we're not in school, we're losing federal reimbursements as well as any funds we would collect on students purchasing a meal.
I see.
So it's about $75,000 a day.
75,000 for the 1 day? And if we started 2 days early, would that offset that?
We could. The danger with going to 2 days early is we were trying to split the difference to give Miss Knight's team proper time to prepare for the start of the school year. And so allowing the instructional side of the house to have enough days before essentially school started.
So here's the dilemma. As a teacher, and I think Dr. Erskine can agree with this, the 2 days that we have school during the Thanksgiving week, we tend to have a great deal of absent students and even teachers for it. But at $75,000 for that day, I mean, does that cost justify removing those 2 days as school days? That's my concern, and I don't know the answer to that. Do you have some thoughts on that, Dr. Erskine?
I do, and one of them, Miss Anderson, is kind of just a money follow-up for you. One of the things that I've been asked multiple times by especially food service personnel, and I can't answer this question. Over the past few years, there's been a conversation about the differentiation between the hours and days, that we don't go 180 instructional days. My understanding is what happens to folks on those days, if you just work in the cafeteria, is that your options are to either come and sit in the building for X number of hours and twiddle your thumbs because there's no work to do, or you can take a personal day. So you're either going to have to burn leave or you're going to have to sit in a shut-down kitchen. And what I wonder is these days off, what is the financial strain on the system by not reconciling the difference between seat hours and calendar days? And are we asking our employees to bear the burden of the difference?
Yeah. Good question.
And I don't know. It wasn't a loaded question. I sincerely don't know
No,
the answer.
There's a lot to unpack in that question, so to answer it simply, I would like to come back with more information to be better prepared to answer your question so that it's a more thoughtful response. My understanding is on days when students aren't there and school nutrition staff are required to be there because their assignment days are more than the days that students are present. That's an opportunity for us to provide professional learning to our school, even our school nutrition staff, safety in the cafeteria, things like that.
And is that what's anticipated to be done if the 2 days are considered to be off for students?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So we'll definitely follow up to your
Please.
question.
Yeah, just because I know that gap of 185 versus 180 causes some consternation, especially for our classified folks. And those are often the people who can afford least to be able to burn a day off. And I just want to make sure that we're not asking more of the people who can least afford to lose that time. Because I understand that the intention is to give training and have in-service time, cleaning for the health department. But my understanding in most of our kitchens is that's not really what happens. And so I'm just worried about whether there's a gap there and whether we could do better for the employees.
Yeah, I would recommend that maybe we'll have Penny Curry come to our next finance committee because we're going to be talking
great.
about the school nutrition
Oh,
fund
good.
on December 11th, so we can round out
Great.
and answer the questions that you
Okay.
have. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions from you? Can he ask a question?
Unfortunately, no.
I didn't think so.
Yes, but we can definitely talk afterwards. Yes.
Sorry, Gavin. Yep.
So, just one,
Yes.
so until we get that additional information, I would hate to move it forward to the full board.
I agree completely. I think we should have more information before we move forward on this particular issue.
I mean, I agree with both of you on this. It sounds great.
Right.
But, burn, kind of wasting those people's days like that is a little rough.
Well, it's 75 grand too.
75 grand a day, and then it's food that's already purchased. I don't know if it would go bad in that amount of time, but just how do you shake that out with those folks?
For me, I'd like to understand it better. And I think that's what needs to happen if possible.
Yeah, so a couple things here. The first one is, in regards to your question, Dr. Erskine, what I can share with you with certainty, and we'll still look into this and we can push this to December, that's totally fine, is when we do surveys and when we talk to our staff and when we gather information from classified and licensed staff, the number one they ask for, they don't ask for more money, they don't ask for more resources, they ask for time. They ask time for training. They ask time for more time off. They ask for time. So when we review this calendar and when we have the conversations of making sure we stay in compliance with the law, which is the 990 hours or the 180 days, because of how our day is situated, we go way beyond the hours. That's how when we have our snow days, like for example last year, we were in good shape. Now we did those 2 work days just to be sure in case there was another snowmageddon, but for the most part we were in really, really good shape. One of the things that we could do, which cuts it close, and I'm not recommending this, but just throwing it out there, is if we want to go up to 180 days, I would recommend that we look at getting us closer to that 990 hours because then it's double that time. The other piece is and we were actually just talking about this earlier today, is there's a lot of constructs in the public education day, as we're talking about with the amount of reimbursement we get and such, is there's not a lot of wiggle room and flexibility when it comes to PD for our staff. And our staff, I've talked to a lot of them, they understand the importance of PD and they're working hard and they're doing all that they can. And then when we say, okay, now your PD has to be after school, or we have PD that's built into the calendar, which, let's face it, sometimes that goes to other things that need to be completed, that PD goes to the wayside. So with these additional days, there is PD that is built in for bus drivers and other classified staff. To talk specifically about what happens on those days, we're more than happy to look into that. That's the first that I'm hearing that they're told to take days off. I mean, I would be really surprised if that was happening. If that is, Dr. Erskine, thank you for telling. That's the first I'm hearing of that. We would never tell people they have to take days off. If they are, we will address that. So we are definitely going to look into that further. But we had that conversation, especially specifically with bus drivers, because of behaviors and because of other logistics, where we had that time built in the calendar. We said, look, you're getting paid for this time, and now it's going to be professional development as we've added these days on. So in regards to the data that Mr. Thompson has shared, we did not want to just come forward and just subtract a bunch of days. We wanted to do that trade-off, and that's why we had that one additional day in the beginning of the year. Fair point that the more days we add off, that's more money that we potentially could be getting with reimbursement. But again, this was another way that we want to highlight Frederick County so that we can compete with other divisions with our recruiting efforts, because we are not going to be able to catch Loudoun. We're trying very, very hard to do that, but this is just a way for us to offer those additional times because, again, we didn't make up these recommendations, right? This is what the staff asked for. This is what parents asked for, and students. Gavin, we can talk afterwards to hear what else you have to say. I'm very interested to hear. So in regards to classified staff, yes, they are the backbone of our school division. We appreciate all that they do, but they are also working during this time. It's not like they're missing those days, and we can definitely look into that. So if this is something that the will of the board wants to push it to December, totally fine with that, and we can definitely get you some more information for the nutritional response. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Also, too, just to clarify, it's on the calendar here, but just for you, the folks listening and for you guys, those 2 days are working days for administrators. They're not days off for everybody on those 2 days for Thanksgiving. So just to make sure that's clear as well.
Or teachers, support staff, everyone.
Correct, they're off, right. Administrators have to work those 2 days.
Of course.
Yes, sir. So that's it in a nutshell. So I want to provide that. So we're more than happy to get that information. And if the will of the board's to push it to December, it's totally fine. We can do that.
I'm just pausing for.
Would we be creating any hardship, Ben, for you or for Mrs. Knight if we do put this off a month? I mean, is this going to cascade any kind of deadlines or planning?
No, I can answer that. No, we just get a lot of questions because, as you know, families like to plan ahead. So we're just getting a lot of questions there as to what is the schedule and calendar for next year. So delaying it one more month, no, there's no issues there. I mean, we've had this finalized for going on a month now, but if we want to delay it a little bit more, that's totally fine. We could do that.
I think,
Mr. Bell, does that mean that it would need to come back to instruction or it would just go to the full board in December?
so that's a good question.
I can answer that.
Please
Nope,
do.
nope, yes. So we can do one of two things. The first thing is we can gather all the information for you, provide it to you either through the weekly, through email, or what have you. If you don't want any further discussion, then just bring it to the full board. Or we have both finance and instruction committee before the December meeting. So we can just move this forward to the next instructional committee meeting with the information you all are requesting, as well as any other follow-up questions you might have.
Yeah, I think so.
As long as there's time for us to see that information, I feel like we've done the due diligence.
Sure.
And it won't create any hardship.
Mr. Sturdivant, Mr. Atkins, do you have anything to weigh in on how we bring this about through email, through?
Is there any way Penny Curry could be at tomorrow's meeting to give us shed a little light on this? I know it's kind of last minute.
Yeah, I can certainly text her and ask, and but as long as she doesn't have another commitment,
If that's the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, may I?
Of course.
Yeah, if that's the only hold-up question is in regard to nutritional staff, we can get an answer to you first thing
Well,
tomorrow
it's
morning.
classified staff, not just nutritional. I know that classified or nutritional was given the example, but
Yeah, again, we'll look into it. This will be a shock to me if that is happening. And if it is, it's a different conversation with my staff. But no, we could definitely look into it and get you that information by tomorrow. Or if you just want to not haste it and just push it to December. It's totally up to you guys. It will not be a burden to us if you want to push it to December.
I think that seems to be the best case.
yeah, just hold off till December, get some
Yeah.
more information.
Yeah.
Let's
could do
do that. And so we can, to sort of sum up, then let's plan on talking about this at the next instruction committee meeting.
Done.
And then we can go from there, and we won't push it any further.
sounds good. So we'll move through the recommended motion slide, and then we'll kick it back to Ms. Knight.
Well, thank you so much for your efforts and for the work that everyone's done on this calendar. I know calendars aren't the easiest thing to do, and I joke with Dr. Hummer about him being award-winning and with a calendar, but he's absolutely right. It is one of the best calendars in the state. There are school divisions that are absolutely jealous of how good this calendar is, and I don't want to, by any stretch, remove the good work that these folks have done. I just want to make sure that I think we understand exactly what's going to take place, and as long as it's not causing any undue, and that way Gavin can get his question answered too, because we do want to hear from our students, and I do want to say, Gavin, I'm really impressed with how often I see you at these things, so kudos to you as well. You were a good runner, and now you're a good listener. All right.
Couldn't agree more. All right, well, thank you. And this brings us to our final item for this evening. So I'd like to invite our Director of Curriculum and Instruction up, Mrs. Swager, to talk about our library updates and the outcome of our reconsideration of materials committee meetings.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Hummer. We are presenting to you this evening the results of the reconsideration requests that were made earlier in the school year, and so we wanted to share those results with you so that you could take action on them. But first, we wanted to just give you an update on the location of the sexually explicit books in each library. Based on board direction after our last meeting, you can see here, this is James Wood High School's section, which is on a cart near the circulation desk. And then we have Millbrook High School, which is on a cart right near the circulation desk. And finally, we have Sharando High School, which is on a cart right near the circulation desk. So we hope that complies with your vision and what you were expecting, and that is where those books are located in each school. Any
Thank
questions
you.
about that?
Mr. Sturdivant?
You all did an excellent job. Thank you very much for everything you did, and I appreciate it because I know we put a lot on you, and you stepped up to the task and knocked it out as a home run, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. I really appreciate you working with us and just continuing with the compromise that we were able to come to with respect to these books.
Well, we certainly appreciate the flexibility of our librarians.
You better believe it.
So, all right, so for the reconsideration of educational materials, once the challenge is made or the request for reconsideration is made, the requester is to complete a form that exists in our policy, and then the division committee is formed, and that committee is made up of school-based staff and parents in that school or from the school from where the challenge is being made. And we always make sure that there are more parents on the committee than there are school-based staff, and that it's an uneven number so that we don't end up with a tie in anything as folks are weighing in on that reconsideration. The committee then reads the book in its entirety, and then they make a recommendation, and their recommendation can be one of three options. They recommend to either retain the material as it exists currently, retain it with restrictions, or withdraw the material from the library. And once they have made that decision, after the process ends, that report is then submitted to the superintendent. So the first book that was reviewed was Beyond Magenta, and reasons for the review included concerns about sexually explicit content, mature themes, concern that there would be influence or confusion for readers still forming their own understandings around identity and relationships, and that they felt that it was mature for high school students. The committee read the book in full, and the majority perspective was to retain the book as it currently exists in the library. They felt that the book aligns with the needs of high school students from the perspective of representation and inclusion. They felt that there are safeguards already in place, such as our opt-in process and the location in the library and the dots on the books. And they felt that the book provides important insight into real experiences and encourages empathy and understanding. The folks who did not think that the book should be considered or retained in the library, who thought that it should be withdrawn, had concerns about pervasive explicit language, sexual content, and depictions of abuse that occurred throughout the text. But they were the minority perspective. And so, based upon that, our division-level committee feedback and recommendation, you can see there the vote count. The recommendation was to retain the book in the high school libraries as it currently exists, marked as sexually explicit. And so on a 5-2 vote, that was the recommendation. And you can see that the factors that they considered, they went in and weighed each of those factors and looked at each of those factors. Those are the same factors that our librarians use when they're selecting books for the library. And so the committee felt that based on all of those factors and based on the information that they had reviewed, they wanted to retain the book. So pursuant to FCPS Regulation 304RE, the Instruction Committee has to determine their recommendation to the full school board that either they would retain the material or retain it with restrictions or withdraw the material. And so the recommendation is listed there based on the committee's recommendation.
So just to be clear, to the folks out there in the audience that are watching, we're not making a decision here at this body to keep, remove, or otherwise do anything to this book other than to bring it to the full board for our full body to make that decision. So our decision is just to move it to the full board.
Well, it's to move the recommendation.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yes,
the
right.
recommendation.
Correct, yes.
The recommendation brought about by that committee.
Correct.
So we either accept the recommendation and the book stays sexually explicit, or we do not accept the recommendation and it gets removed. Is that correct?
Well, just for a point of clarification, the division level committee did make their recommendation, which this committee should consider, but then this committee can make its own recommendation, one of the three that you've mentioned that's listed in our regulation.
And is that required to make this motion? To make our recommendation, or can we move this to the full board for the full board's recommendation?
Our regulation requires that this committee make a recommendation for the full board to consider.
I see. So we're making a recommendation on the recommendation.
Correct. It can mirror the Division Review Committee's recommendation exactly. It can be slightly different, or it can be the opposite, just as long as it meets 1, 2, or 3.
Mr. Chair, if I may, because I want to clarify between this and other recommendations. As the committee, you can shift any recommendation that we provide to you. This isn't changing any of your other processes. This is the recommendation that the committee, and we agree with that recommendation that we're providing to you. You then either agree with the recommendation we have in front of you, or you can change that recommendation that goes to the full board. And then, of course, as always, the board can then change, shift, or adjust that recommendation that has been brought forth to them.
Of course. Now I
Correct.
think I understand.
Yes.
I have a headache, but I understand.
Mr. Bell, can I just ask a clarifying
course.
question? So, and Caitlin, I don't know if this is maybe one you might have to answer. The proposed motion in front of us is not to just move it to the full board for consideration. It's to move the full board with a recommendation to retain the material based on the review committee's finding.
That is correct. The recommended motion, as you see on the screen, reflects or mirrors the Division Review Committee.
Okay.
But as Dr. Hummer mentioned, it could be changed based on the committees.
What other options exist other than forwarding this to the full board for recommendation with a recommendation to retain?
Well, you can retain the material, and currently the material is in our libraries and marked as sexually explicit, so there's already the restriction. I'm not aware of a different type of restriction, but then the last option is to withdraw the material from the libraries.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just reiterate what the committee had stated, and as you saw, there was a quite diverse group of individuals that agreed with this and didn't agree with this. But what I understand, and please chime in, was that it was unanimous that they all agree that the structures that we currently have in place, the opt-in, the separate location, and the green sticker, in addition to this, fulfilled unanimously across the board. I want to add that in there because of what you all, the work that you did up until this point, I think really helped the committee to navigate this conversation, because regardless of where it stood, it's still going to have parameters in place. Because, and the reason I add that, Dr. Erskine, to your question is you all could have done that. You all could have said, yeah, well, we want it in the library and we want it on a special shelf, or we want a special sticker on it. So you guys could have added those things on, but you already did that up until this point, which is helping with this process, if that's your holdup or consternation.
If I may here, let's just cut to the chase on this whole matter. We asked these librarians and our staff to do a lot of work, and they've done it with a tremendous amount of energy and professionalism. They've made the recommendation. I say that we go with the recommendation that they've made. If we need to discuss this further, then when all the board members are here, we can discuss it further. But I think they have done exactly what they asked them to. My big mouth has come against these books for now 2 years, but we came up with a policy, and I think it's a darn good policy, and I have no problems with what the board recommended, and I think we should follow their recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Sturdivant. Mr. Atkins?
Well, to agree with Mr. Sturdivant, I mean, we've put a lot of stuff in place, and the librarians have done a lot of work on this. My only suggestion it would be on the recommendation, since it has been something that has been polarizing, and it does contain sexually explicit materials, as we've heard parents read out from the podium, that we retain it, but with option 2, retain the material with restrictions or modifications. The restrictions or modifications would be the green sticker and everything else that we have in place.
It currently has that, actually. The book currently has that.
And I agree, but the recommendation before us says retain the material. That doesn't say retain the material with the restrictions or modifications. That's my only 2 cents.
Well, it's already, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, and
So
that's-
I
that's what I
totally
said.
hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but it is because it is labeled as sexually explicit. So it does have all that's what I was saying earlier, is that in addition to keeping it on the shelf, we already have these structures in place. So currently it has the sticker on it and it's on that shelf.
So per the,
I would
It's
withdraw
going to
then.
go on, it's going to go on the card.
Okay.
We've got
Yeah.
it set up.
It
If
has
the
the
parent
sticker.
wants their child to read it, then more power
So-
to you, opt in.
And
Thank
you have
you.
to opt in to read it.
per our policy, we allow these 3 options. And so even though this particular book has the restriction and modification to it, it's still listed up here. So essentially, we have 2 choices with this book. We can either go with a full recommendation to retain the material, send that to the full board, or we can, at this body, remove it from the shelf. So I think with that, we've probably discussed this ad nauseum, and
But I do have one more question.
Okay.
Right when you thought it was over.
just when I thought we were safe, go ahead.
Ms. Jordan, could we make a motion that has a period after the words full board? Does it need to include the language with the recommendation to retain the material?
According to our regulation, it does require the instructional committee to make a recommendation to the full board. The full
Yes.
board can then do what it wills with the instruction committee and with the division level committee's recommendation.
The full board can come up with their own recommendation.
Yeah.
So, so we have a motion. And with that,
Do we?
what?
Just since just the 2 of us.
It's the 2 of us, so can I make the motion? Or does he have to make the motion? So I move the committee forward the appeal of the school review committee's decision regarding Beyond Magenta to the full board with the recommendation to retain the material. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made and properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I just want to say, because I know that this is, like a couple of other people said, this is a polarizing issue, especially with this book and especially with the publicity it's gotten. I'm not altogether jazzed about being on the record of making a recommendation to retain, but I also respect what Mr. Sturdivant said about the fact that this would put it in front of the 7 of us instead of the 2 of us. And because of that reason, and knowing it will get that full hearing in front of the full board, that's why I will support the motion.
All right, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the full board should have the opportunity to weigh in on this. And again, I know we have been around and around the mulberry bush with these books and this issue, and I truly appreciate all the hard work that you've done, all the hard work that the librarians have done. And I understand that we unfortunately lost a librarian due to this in one of the schools, and I'm very sorry to have heard that. I hope that person finds what they're looking for, but I'm really disappointed that this issue brought us to that. But with that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Did you say aye? Motion carries.
All right, so to continue, we also held reconsideration for the book Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. The book was requested for reconsideration due to concerns about crude humor and explicit sexual language that could normalize those behaviors in, or behavior or speaking among students. And so the majority perspective from the committee after they read the book and reviewed everything was that they retained the book. They felt that it was realistic and humorous and had realistic portrayals of adolescent relationships. They thought it was engaging for young adults. They thought that the references to sexual content were brief and contextually okay, as well as humorous, and they felt that it promoted positive social and cultural understanding. For those who had the perspective that was the minority perspective, which was to withdraw the book, they cited concerns about limited instances of sexual language, but still suggested that the book would be labeled sexually explicit so that families knew that that was in there if the book were retained. And so the committee feedback and recommendation was a vote that 6 of them voted to retain the book in the libraries. 1 voted not to retain the book, and 2 indicated that they would retain it but want to redesignate it as sexually explicit, and then 2 didn't respond to that part of it. So it was kind of a nebulous vote on that part. So they again reviewed the factors that are listed there that our librarians review, and based upon that, their recommendation was to retain the book with the restriction or modification that it be reclassified as sexually explicit.
Thank you. I move that the committee forward the appeal of the School Review Committee's decision regarding Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl to the full board with the recommendation to retain the material and redesignate the material as sexually explicit. Do I have a second?
So maybe as a point of discussion first, before I'm ready to get to a second.
Sure.
Can we go back a few slides, please? To the one about, one more. Okay. Is this the same book the Vice Chair Klein read from in the last meeting?
Yes, it is, and this
Okay.
is
Yes.
the same book that I had objected to originally. But again, I understand you still got something to say, but again, I'm going to stand up and say, we tasked these librarians and our school staff with doing what we asked them to do, and they've done it, and I feel that their recommendation should be forwarded to the full board.
So
Yes, it is the one she read.
So I don't necessarily disagree, and here's the reason I'm asking. The 5th line of this says that people who read this book say that this information or these lines were presented in a non-graphic manner. I feel like maybe we didn't read the same book, or I'm starting to have major doubts about the efficacy of this review committee, because that might be the single stupidest thing I've ever read on a slide. Like, I mean, we can go and do a playback. We can ask the clerk to go back and read that out loud. I'd prefer not to because Nina won't like me anymore. But that's about as graphic as it gets.
Plus,
Mr.
it was 3
Servant-
pages of it.
The reason I raise that is because, much like the last one, putting this in front of all 7 of us, I think is generally a good idea to review. The reason this bothers me is that if a review committee read what she read out loud and their description, which I'm reading from this slide, I haven't actually seen the forms and all of that went into this, but I'm assuming all of that's accurate, even though we've gotten inaccurate information about library books from the same source in the past. If that's all accurate, how is this non-graphic? That worries me. With that said, and Mr. Sturtevant's blessing, I will second the motion, but I'm under protest.
All right, we have a motion, and it has been properly seconded. And I think we've had our discussion, unless, Mr. Atkins, you would like to add anything?
I think it should go to the full board.
Thank you.
However, this is one of the ones I would recommend that we got rid of. There is no educational value in it. We talked about, Dr. Myers talked about it earlier, getting quality educational materials in front of our students to bolster reading. This in no way is a quality educational material. It is graphic, it is nasty, but we do have the process. And, to each his own. Every trash can has its lid, and I believe this is the trash can.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. I would just like to add again that the process that we have is, I think, a very good process. It's one that we all worked together on and came up with together. You know, I've read both of these books, and I can understand both sides and their concerns, certainly. But you know, I'm looking at this purely from the regulation and from the idea that we have these extra safeguards for our students that we've required of our libraries and librarians to do. We have a cart next to the librarian's checkout stand. We have them labeled as sexually explicit, and we also have we've changed it from an opt-out to an opt-in process. And I believe that with these safeguards, that it would sort of almost go against this idea of what we're trying to accomplish by allowing parents to make the decisions for their students or for their children. So with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This moves to the full board.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your time and attention. Thank you, Ms. Swager.
Thank you, Ms. Swager.
And that is all for us this evening that we have, and I'm happy to take any additional questions.
No, I think we're good. I think we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn our meeting.
I second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.